For more than 6 decades, Lost in Space occupied a special place in television history as wholesome family entertainment, a show about hope, adventure, and togetherness in the vast expanse of the cosmos. But beneath the gleaming hull of the Jupiter 2, a very different story was unfolding. One by one, the cast members who lived through the making of this beloved series have broken their silence, and what they've revealed is as far from family-friendly as it gets. These are the 10 most shocking secrets confirmed by the cast themselves, secrets that fans never had a chance to hear, not in 60 years. Marta Kristen, who played Judy Robinson, the golden daughter of the Robinson family, admitted for the first time that a scene existed which nearly destroyed the show's carefully maintained image. "I've never told anyone this before," she said, "but we once filmed a scene that, when we watched it back, everyone understood instantly why CBS had to destroy the reel." In the scene, Judy is captured by an alien creature. The script called for the creature to restrain her for dramatic tension. But during filming, the director pushed for something more primal, more intimate, to emphasize the creature's threat. The actor in the rubber suit was instructed to approach Judy in a way that made audiences feel genuinely violated. When the camera rolled, the creature moved in far closer than Marta expected, using body movements that mimicked an animalistic attempt to claim her. The director shouted from behind the camera, "Hold it. Stay there. Let the real emotion show." The discomfort Marta felt was real, very real. When the footage was reviewed in the editing room, the atmosphere went cold instantly. Crew members described it as so adult it could never be shown to the public. CBS told Marta their decision plainly. "That scene is too sensitive. It cannot exist." The footage was cut, locked away, and later confirmed to have been completely destroyed. No collector owns a copy. It vanished from history. "I felt uncomfortable, very uncomfortable," Marta said. But back then, actresses didn't have the right to say no. Jonathan Harris, the actor who gave life to the unforgettable Dr. Zachary Smith, revealed that the original version of the character was nothing like the comic coward fans came to love. Dr. Smith was originally immoral, Harris said in a rare interview. Completely immoral. In early scripts, Smith was described as cold-blooded and ruthless, quietly violent. One of the first lines Harris had to read left him stunned. It implied that Smith was willing to sacrifice young Will Robinson, a child, if it meant saving his own skin. The original Smith was also written as a psychological manipulator who dropped sinister, double-meaning lines and reveled in quiet malice. When CBS saw the first screen tests, they summoned Harris and the producers immediately. Their message was blunt. He was too dark, too evil, too frightening for children. Harris understood that a villain this uncompromising rarely survived long in family television. So he made a radical decision. He began rewriting the character from the inside out, episode by episode. He added exaggerated gestures, comedic whining, sly smiles that were mischievous, but never truly dangerous. He transformed Dr. Smith into something no one expected, someone both infuriating and endearing. He called it a survival strategy. And eventually, CBS could no longer kill the character, because by then everyone knew the truth. Without Dr. Smith, Lost in Space would lose its strangest and most unforgettable soul. June Lockhart, who played the warm and graceful Maureen Robinson, remembers a line she has never been able to forget. After slipping off an elevated set piece and slamming into a metal edge, bruising her hip and shoulder so severely she thought she couldn't continue, the director's voice cut through the silence on the stage. "June, get up. We have to shoot it again from the top." When June protested, saying the situation wasn't safe, she was told, "We don't have time for safe." There was no set medic, no protective gear, no injury protocol, only a shooting schedule and orders to keep moving. The Jupiter 2 model had been built nearly 3 meters off the ground, and the crew had laid down only a thin carpet beneath it. Its purpose was to muffle sound, not protect actors from falls. This wasn't an isolated incident. There were many scenes where June was required to run across slippery ground under blisteringly hot studio lights, or perform next to active machinery, without being warned of the risks. CBS never mentioned any of these accidents in interviews. They wanted Lost in Space to remain wholesome and safe, at least on the surface. If you ever watched Lost in Space and felt there was something unspoken between Don West and Judy Robinson, you weren't imagining it. Mark Goddard confirmed that the natural chemistry between him and Marta Kristen was deliberately crushed by CBS before it could ever blossom on screen. Early scripts written by Owen Allen gave the Don-Judy relationship a clear romantic direction, not melodrama, but the careful, mature affection that might naturally grow between two young people isolated together in a dangerous environment. Then CBS stepped in. After a scene where Mark and Marta exchanged a look that felt a little too real, a producer pulled them aside and issued a list of prohibitions that Mark still remembers word for word. No touching, no holding hands, no hugging, no leaning on each other, no looking at each other for more than 3 seconds. Marta later confirmed the same experience. Mark and I had natural chemistry, but every time we acted, they reminded us to keep our distance. CBS feared that any hint of affection might be interpreted as too adult, too suggestive, or worst of all, emotionally inappropriate for children. At one point, the two actors asked if Don could protect Judy in a dangerous scene simply by taking her hand. CBS replied, "No. It looks too suggestive." As Mark summarized it, they wanted us to look like coworkers, not real human beings. Billy Mumy was only 11 years old when Lost in Space began filming, yet he was assigned numerous scenes that would absolutely violate today's child safety laws. One of the most serious incidents happened during what appeared to be a straightforward scene, Will and the robot moving across an alien landscape. The robot was operated from inside by Bob May, confined within a suit weighing nearly 90 kilograms with almost no visibility. When moving, the suit was prone to violent, uncontrolled shifts, and that day it toppled. The robot lost its balance, Billy recalled, though the fear from that childhood moment still lingered in his eyes. "I heard Bob shouting, but no one had time to react. That whole heavy metal body came at me like a falling tree." The entire mass slammed into Billy's leg with enough force to send a grown adult to hospital. "If it had fallen just a little differently, just a few inches, my leg would have been crushed." What followed was even more shocking than the accident itself. There was no accident report, no medical examination, no official statement, and no apology. Instead, CBS issued a single directive: do not bring this up. Ever. Billy returned to filming the next day, with his legs still swollen. No one complained, because in Hollywood at that time, a child actor was easier to replace than a 90-kilogram robot that had already become the show's icon. It took him nearly 50 years to finally speak about it. When audiences think of the Lost in Space robot, they imagine a lovable, loyal machine. For Bob May, the man who had to live inside that metal shell across all 3 seasons, it was a steel prison. The suit weighed nearly 200 pounds, was constructed from rigid materials with no cooling system, and had almost no ventilation. Under the old halogen studio lights, temperatures inside the suit could climb past 130 degrees Fahrenheit. During one scene where the robot was required to stand motionless beside a control panel blasted by direct red lighting, the metal absorbed heat so rapidly that Bob felt, in his own words, as though his skin was being roasted alive. He whispered to a nearby technician for help, but the roar of the stage machinery drowned him out. Then his vision blurred, his breathing turned ragged, and everything went black. Bob May passed out inside the suit. 2 crew members rushed over and used their full strength to lift the robot torso off him. When they finally pulled him free, he was barely breathing, soaked in sweat. It happened twice. And each time, CBS's response was the same. "They told us no one is ever allowed to mention this," Bob said. "No press, no interviews, no word of mouth." CBS feared the public discovering that the show's most beloved character for children was being performed under conditions dangerous enough to kill a man. That truth was buried for decades. Of all the confessions from the Lost in Space cast, Guy Williams's may be the most quietly heartbreaking. Before the show, Williams was Zorro, a global television legend, a symbol of heroism and masculinity adored around the world. When he signed with CBS, he believed he would again play a noble leader, John Robinson, the head of the Robinson family. Instead, as the seasons progressed, the scripts shifted their focus entirely toward Dr. Smith. Jonathan Harris had transformed Smith into such a compelling, scene-stealing figure that CBS pushed the entire show's creative energy in his direction. John Robinson received less dialogue, fewer action scenes, and fewer meaningful moments with the family he was supposed to lead. "I signed on to play a hero," Guy said. "They turned me into a man who just stands and watches." There were weeks of shooting where, across 5 full days, he didn't have a single significant scene. He became a decorative character, sometimes feeling like an unnecessary presence in his own family. Multiple crew members confirmed that Guy's demeanor changed noticeably as the seasons wore on. He grew quieter, more distant, especially toward Harris, who had stolen the spotlight, not through malice, but through sheer charisma. It wasn't jealousy that consumed Guy Williams. It was betrayal by the network that had promised him, "You will be the star." The wound stayed with him for the rest of his life. Under the laws of the time, child actors were permitted to work a maximum of 6 hours per day, including mandatory on-set school time. Billy Mumi's experience was nothing close to that. "There were days I worked 12 hours, he said. "And children aren't allowed to do that." But no one cared. When CBS realized that Will Robinson was the most popular character among young viewers, they demanded more scenes, more emotional moments, more content, which meant Billy had to be on set constantly. On days when filming ran long, school hours were simply canceled. When labor protection officials raised concerns, CBS had a solution. They instructed the crew not to record Billy's real working hours, not to file accurate reports, and absolutely not to let the press find out. When a studio teacher objected to Billy being overworked, they were replaced before the week was out. "There were times I was so tired I'd fall asleep in a chair," Billy recalled. "And when I woke up, they'd pull me straight into the next scene." Even as a child, he understood that silence was the only way to keep his role. It took decades before he finally told the truth. Mark Goddard exposed a side of CBS that, by today's standards, would be considered outright unethical. When contracts were renewed for Season 2, the cast were presented with a clause that forbade any negative comments about the scripts, not just in interviews, but even in casual conversation in the dressing room. By that point, the Lost in Space scripts were being openly ridiculed by critics for becoming too silly. The cast were growing frustrated, particularly Guy Williams. CBS feared that if any actor spoke honestly, the public would lose confidence in a series the network had already committed enormous resources to continuing. The network monitored the actors closely. All interviews were pre-screened. Sensitive answers were cut before publication. The cast had to submit transcripts to CBS for approval before appearing on television. One cast member learned the hard way that casually remarking, "This week's script is a bit silly," resulted in their scenes being cut for 3 consecutive episodes.